All right, looking at the NFC West here, guys, home to the Super Bowl champion LA Rams, but also home to drama when it comes down to how this division is usually settled. You know, before we had 18 weeks, it was usually settled in week 17. It was settled in week 18 this year with the Rams and the 49ers, and expect the Seahawks perhaps to be back into the mix, certainly the Cardinals as well here. But Jim, as you look at this division, I mean, is there any reason to believe that this is not going to come down to the very end once again to decide who's on top in this division?
No, it's such a competitive division. Outside of the AFC West, I would say that it may be the most competitive division, top to bottom. The thing that's fascinating to me about the NFC West actually is just we talk about how it's a quarterback-driven league, and really, there's only one team in the NFC West that's settled at quarterback, if you will, or doesn't have the big question marks. You know, the 49ers, we know or we believe strongly they're going to go to Trey Lance this year. Um, in terms of Arizona, the question is, can Kyler Murray take that next step and begin to lift his team, particularly late in the year? And then in Seattle, we still don't know who it is. As much as they say they love Drew Lock, is he going to be the guy?
Right.
So it's interesting to me that in this division, there's only one team, and that's the defending Super Bowl champion that has the least amount of questions, if you will, at the quarterback position.
And Bridget, how do you see the division playing out here after watching, the 49ers and Rams kind of go at it this year to decide who won it last?
Yeah, I think it all came down, like you mentioned, to that last game. And the 49ers, for whatever reason, have a leg up on the Rams going back the past like 6 games that they've played each other. I think it'll be a battle again. You know, we thought this year the Rams were definitely going to beat them. And that was one of those games that tripped them up the first time they played. I do think that the Rams have a little more stability, as you were mentioning, Jim, because they're getting back Matthew Stafford. They have Cooper Kupp. They have that chemistry on offense that a lot of these teams, we don't know if it's going to exist when we come to this season. Kyler Murray has been a huge question mark. What's going on with him? Like you mentioned, can he take this team to, win the division? And Drew Lock I just don't see him the answer for Seattle. And Trey Lance, I don't know if he can bring it. I just think the Rams have that leg up right now, even though they did lose some key pieces.
Sure.
What's fascinating to me is that we talk about Drew Lock, and I remember having the conversation with John Schneider, after that deal was made, and I said to him kind of what Bridget said, I don't see Drew Lock being the answer. And John seemed almost, I don't want to say offended, but really surprised.
How dare you, Jim?
I know that I would have that feeling. And look, the thing they're resting on with Drew Lock is that his first year in Denver, he played in a similar system. And when he played late in the year, he went 4-1. I think he had 7 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, something like that. And so their belief and Drew's belief is that not that he's going to hit the ground running, but that there is a greater comfort level in this offense, and he has had success in it in the past. And we know that Pete is going to try and run the ball and not throw it as much as Russell did. They also believe that Drew is going to be better in terms of timing in the passing game. One of the criticisms of Russell in Seattle privately was that he held on to the ball too long looking for the big play. But defense is going to pick up on that at some point if that's what they're doing, and they're going to start taking away those quick passes. And then the question becomes, what can Seattle do offensively? Because Russell was such a master at escaping the rush, evading the pressure. Can Drew Lock do that as well? We'll find out.
Okay, guys, since we're talking about the Seahawks there, and we've kind of divided this division up between you guys and Bridget, I want you to focus in on the Seahawks here for us as we look back on their offseason moves, which, are always going to be headlined by the fact that they traded Russell Wilson away. How does that factor into a grade that you would give the Seahawks for what they've done the last few weeks?
Can we give them an F? I don't think so. I'm not going to be that hard, but I think the whole what they've done in the off season is headlined by DK Metcalf's diet of candy. Like that shot them up a little bit in my rankings.
Put them up.
I'm going to give them a C+ for what they've done this offseason. Of course, Russell Wilson leaving their franchise quarterback. Pete Carroll says we're not rebuilding. So when I look at the Seahawks, I think, how are you not rebuilding when you just let go of the only quarterback that we've known as a Seattle Seahawk. I think they did make some moves. They brought in the linebacker from the Chargers, Nwosu. I know you said, Jim, that even their GM had trouble saying his name, so I apologize if I'm saying it wrong. I think that's an underrated move. That of course, Bobby Wagner. We haven't even talked about that. They let Bobby Wagner go the way that they let him go. He talked this week on when he was introduced by the Rams and said they didn't even call him. That left a bad taste, I think, in a lot of people's mouths. But can Nwosu fill that hole at linebacker? Drew Lock, I don't see him as the answer at quarterback. I think it's going to be interesting to see what they do. They do have two first-round picks, one first-round pick at number 9, and will they go with a quarterback? Is a Malik Willis still on the board at number 9? Can they take a quarterback who can compete with Drew Lock? To me, whoever they take, if they take a quarterback, I don't think this is somebody that is going to make, an immediate impact on Seattle this season. I think they're more planning for 2023 with whoever this is, but it is still someone to get into practice, to have competition with Drew Lock and, maybe elevate the game there. Some of the good things they did, they re-signed Rashad Penny, the running back. Again, I think there's a lot of questions. It'll be interesting to see when the draft comes in a couple of weeks. I think quarterback, offensive tackle, and cornerback are holes that I see this roster needing to fill.
Yeah, there you go. And look, I think it's rare that you see a team lose their franchise cornerstone on both the offensive and defensive sides of the ball in the same offseason, which the Seattle Seahawks certainly done here, finishing last place in the division. Very unfamiliar spot for Pete Carroll's crew in his tenure as the head coach. Let's move then up in ascending order in the division here and go with the San Francisco 49ers. Of course, found their way into the postseason late, 10-7 as the final record there, and then even advanced into the playoffs, of course, as well with that win over the Dallas Cowboys. And now perhaps getting ready, Jim, to turn the reins over to Trey Lance as their starting quarterback with all the Jimmy Garoppolo trade rumors. How do you evaluate what they've done this offseason here these last few weeks?
Are you asking for a grade?
Sure, give me one.
Oh, it's incomplete. Because for me, so many things revolve around what they do with Jimmy. They did not plan on having Jimmy on the roster this late into the offseason, and the expectation that he would be gone, that his salary would be removed from the cap, and that they could then proceed with trying to do extensions for Deebo Samuel and Nick Bosa. And everything has kind of been held up now because of that. So that's why I give it an incomplete. Once Jimmy is gone, then they'll be better positioned to address those extensions that they know and want to do. Having said that, I think they went out and they got a young cornerback in Jadarius Ward, and that was a position of need for them. I still say defensively, they need more help up front in terms of edge rush. Dee Ford has been injured every year but one that he's been there, and they've got to find a complement for Nick Bosa. Now, initially last year, they went in thinking that they would put Eric Armstead outside, and when Javon Kinlaw got injured, they had to readjust their defensive line, and they ended up moving Armstead inside. They got great play from DJ Jones, and that's how they shored up that defense. But they've got to get a complement for Nick Bosa. And I think that they look in the draft for that because there are some folks there, and it's considered to be a deep draft there. Short of that, everything in San Francisco is gonna come down to quarterback play. And Trey Lance, I do believe, will be that guy. That was the plan, to have him play this year and year 2. And the question becomes, how quickly does he come along? And at this point, we just don't know.
I think that's a fair assessment. Certainly, you don't take a guy number 3 overall, to stash him forever. So
when you've given up what they gave up too.
Exactly. And look, this is a team, that we felt like was in a pretty good spot roster wise, last year, even before they went and took, Trey Lance. So let's see.
This too, Rhett. For them, it's their roster is solid, if not loaded.
Right.
So for them, the last few years, it has always come down to health in terms of how they play. You go back to last year and you see the emergence of Deebo Samuel. it wasn't necessarily out of creativity by the staff. It was out of necessity because their running back position was depleted because of injuries. You look at the changes on the defensive line that were made, it was not because of creativity, it was because of
Yeah.
necessity, because
Yeah.
of injuries. So if they can just stay healthy, they have a roster to compete for a spot in the Super Bowl. As we know, last year they went to the NFC Championship game
Yeah.
and were very close to advancing. So this team is not far away at all in terms of getting back to the Super Bowl as it was, what, 2, 3 years ago, whatever it was. It seems like a lifetime ago, but
It does.
um, at this point, they all run together. All
Yeah.
the
No,
years.
I think you're right. Bridget, let's come back to you here with the defending Super Bowl champion LA Rams. And as you were mentioning there, we talk about a team that that lost Von Miller, who was a big part of their postseason success, certainly, and their success the second half of the season, but did bring in Allen Robinson. How do you grade what they did this offseason?
I'm going to give them a B plus. I think there weren't a ton of splashy moves from the Rams, but I do think that they filled some holes that left. Von Miller leaves. They bring in Bobby Wagner. I think that was a really smart move, both for on the field and in the locker room. I think those two guys kind of bring similar veteran style, support that some of this younger team needs in the locker room. Letting go of Robert Woods was really hard to see. Such a great guy, such a great player. Of course, he was injured last season. Allen Robinson, though, I think that was a great pickup for them. I think they have one of the strongest wide receiver cores, and we still don't know what's happening with Odell Beckham Jr., right? It seems like they might still want to pursue him. I know he's dealing with the torn ACL and recovering there. That's a question mark. We did find out this week that Aaron Donald will be back, which is huge for them because there was talks, he was put his Calabasas house up, which is really nice, by the way, if you haven't seen it. Put it up for sale. So there was questions about if he's retiring, but I think he's ready to run it back. I think the thing is, the biggest question for me is, can they repeat, right? The last time that happened for two teams to win back-to-back Super Bowls was, I think, 04-05 with the New England Patriots. It's not very common. And I think the biggest struggle or the Achilles heels for the Rams will be their depth, specifically on the offensive line. When we get into week 10, week 12, where players are really banged up, do they have enough depth there to support them if somebody gets injured? I think that's a position in the draft that they need to look at along with edge and cornerback. But I do think they have all the pieces. I just think they need to make sure that line is there to support Matthew Stafford, right? He's always better when he's standing up on his 2 feet than on the ground.
Absolutely right. I couldn't agree with you more there. Let's finish this grading of the offseason moves in this division, Jim, with the Arizona Cardinals. How do you see it?
Yeah, Rhett, I think right now I would give them a C minus. And you could say that's being generous. Look, they've got some major issues, in my opinion. Number one, if you look offensively, I think they continue to need to want to upgrade the offensive line. Number two, wide receiver. We saw what happened when D-Hop went down last year, how that impacted Kyler. His play truly fell off. And so if they stay healthy, you say, okay, you've got Hop, you've got Moore, and you think maybe you're okay. I don't think they have enough there. But my biggest concern for them is defensively. Chandler Jones, their all-time sacks leader, is gone. And the question becomes, who is going to pressure off the edge? Now, we know Marcus Golden led them in sacks last year. But part of that is because Chandler Jones occupied the minds and the game plans of so many defensive coordinators. Protections were slid in his direction. Who's going to bring that element now to free up other guys? J.J. Watt, as much as we love him and as great as he was in his prime, has shown he can't stay healthy. And so I don't know where it's coming from. Now, I know they feel good. They went out and got a corner in free agency, and so they kind of feel like that's their draft pick at that position. But they also need more help in the secondary. So I look at all that they've lost, and I say I don't think that they've replaced those players. It was big that they re-signed James Conner, who was one of the better goal line players last year, running backs last year. But you lose a Chase Edmonds, who was tremendous for them when he was healthy. Offensively, at wideout, you lose Christian Kirk, who was an ascending player and a guy that you spent a number 3 on, I believe. So normally when you spend or when you use draft capital on a 1 to 3 and he's an ascending player, those are guys you want to keep. They're supposed to be the nucleus and foundation going forward. Well, he's gone now. So I just think they have a lot of questions. To me, they tried the Rams formula last year in terms of going out, getting veterans, making that run, whether it was J.J. Watt, A.J. Green, all these types of players, and it didn't work out for them. And so now it's kind of like, what now? And I'm intrigued to see what they do.
I am too. And so with that, then let's go dig a little bit deeper into some draft, priorities. Need is always a difficult question when it comes to the draft, right? Because every GM will tell you they're just going to take the best available player. So let's start with the Cardinals, Jim, who, as they sit there in the first round, could have some real options. Maybe is it best available edge rusher, that's there for them at that pick in the 20s?
Yeah, look, I'm one of those old school guys who says you don't draft for need. You stay true to your board, because when you start drafting for need, that's where you get into trouble. And sometimes you overrate a player simply because of need, and you pass up guys who are going to be true superstars or all pros in this league. And we can go through drafts every year and talk about guys who went in the middle of the first or even later, because teams drafted for need and passed up on a dominant player, like Aaron Donald, best player in football, who went in the teens. So anyway, having said that, no question, the Cardinals need to address edge rushers, we just said. And then I think after that, the priority should be either line. To me, football teams are built inside out.
Yeah.
And so I would look O-line or D-line at that point.
Yeah, I think that's a great spot. I'd love to see a player like Boye Mafe, edge rusher out of Minnesota, if he's there at 23 when the Cardinals are on the clock. If that fourth tackle is there, Trevor Penning, maybe from Northern Iowa. As you mentioned, some of those potential positions of interest there for the Cardinals at 23. Okay, Bridget.
Rhett reeling off the names, man.
Hey,
you know what?
This is my time of year here, Jim.
I'm going to give your listeners and your viewers some inside information here. I don't know squat about these players, these college players. We don't, at least
that's why I'm here.
I don't see much college football, if any at all, during the season. There just isn't time. So I always love when people who don't follow college football all of a sudden watch a little tape and say they're draft experts.
Sure.
This is who should go. And
yeah.
I'm here, Rhett, to acknowledge I don't know who these players are in terms of how good they are.
Tune in to Move the Sticks later today at 3 o'clock Eastern time, and Path to the Draft. We got you covered here on NFL Network throughout the week as we get you up to April 28th in the NFL Draft. All right, Bridget, you touched on it briefly there with the Seahawks at 9. Really interesting spot for them. Is it quarterback, to develop behind Drew Lock, or, is there another position that you could see of interest there?
You know what? I'm mad that I didn't even bring up when we first talked about the Seahawks. I think it's still too early. Like my brain is not fully functioning. What if Baker comes on the table, right? That's a possibility that we haven't talked about. Can the Seahawks find a way to get Baker Mayfield? I think he would be a good fit for them at quarterback. And if that were to happen, though, I think maybe if that does happen, it happens after the draft. Say it happens before the draft. Of course, don't go for a quarterback at number 9. Right. I think there are some good offensive tackles in this class. Ike Ekwonu, I covered at NC State. If he's still there at 9, I'll be shocked, but I think he would be a great fit in the Seahawks program. So I think it's going to depend what they're able to do. Also, there was talk, I think there's still some talk about, Metcalf, if they they said that they don't want to trade him or whatever, but if the right deal was in there, what could they get for him? That'll be interesting to see too. And then cornerback, I think that's another position. I don't know that they should go for a cornerback at 9, but that's why I'm not a GM, I guess.
It's okay. There you go. So look, and the Rams and the 49ers guys don't have first round picks. We won't see the 49ers until number 61 overall. Yeah, so there's just another chance for the 49ers to get some good football players to continue, to bolster their depth. And then for the Rams, maybe in the third round there at number 104 overall, there's a couple of edge rushers that they like. Perhaps it's a guy like Myjai Sanders, out of Cincinnati, or D'Angelo Malone out of Western Kentucky, there in that range, that are there. So
You
without
know
first
what,
round
man?
picks, what do you
That's
got, Jim?
it's a great point that you make in terms of the Rams not having first round picks and their ability still to win a championship. And I think a lot
That's
of
how they do
credit,
it.
yeah, you have to give a lot of credit to Les Snead and their scouting department because they have hit on so many of those
Yeah.
mid round and late picks and turned them into productive players and whatnot. If you're gonna try and follow the blueprint that the Rams used in terms of going all in and getting these veterans and that sort of thing, you better have some young inexpensive talent who perform, and they do. And again, I think we should tip our caps to Les Snead and that scouting department.
Yeah, Les and his crew has been as good on day 2 of the draft, rounds 2 and 3, as any team in football, and they've had to be without a first round pick for the last decade.